Coming up, Kurt Maloo, one half of the Swiss duo Double, or Doublé as they were known back then. Kurt and Felix Haug recorded 2 albums, charted all over Europe, in America and in Australia with The Captain of Her Heart, a song that went against every trend at that time. Now, Kurt's story spans 3 countries over 4 decades and revolves around a song that no one thought would ever be a hit.
It could be true, it could be not true. It's a good story, though. This melancholic, rather dark part prepares you for the return of the melody that can shine. At the record company, the secretaries started to whistle the melody all the time. And he wanted to do it the best way he can, and that's why he was afraid of performing. I didn't want to come to the point where our friendship was in danger. So we said, let's call it a day.
Please like, subscribe, and become a member. Every little bit helps me continue. Back to Kurt. Kurt Maloo, welcome. This is an immense pleasure because whenever I interview someone who has contributed to the musical culture, and it's been part of my life, it's a really nice feeling to be able to connect with them, although we'll only be talking, obviously, but it's a really good feeling. So thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you. I'm flattered.
I just, I want to know something about your childhood, because you grew up around creativity as a young boy, didn't you?
Well, my mother was very musical. Not so much my father, but she used to play the mandolin. She loves to dance and to sing. So I was in a sort of musical background, yeah.
So what sort of music did she play, and what sort of music did she listen to? Was there a distinction between the two things?
Well, she grew up also in a very musical family. They made house concerts. Father playing the guitar, her sister also mandolin, and her mother the violin. And they went from house to house playing for their friends.
Your father was a photographer, wasn't he? Or he had been a photographer.
He had been in France because his family moved to France, but they had to return for World War II. They went back to Switzerland, but he grew up in France, yeah. As a photographer, he couldn't make a living, so then he changed and became a banker.
Did you get a chance to look at his photographs, and did he talk about what he had?
No. I found his photographs. I actually found after his death, and I was pretty surprised how good he was. But he never made a fuss about it. He just, he had no problem to be a banker.
So there you are. You're brought up around, well, particularly from your mother's side, you're brought up around this creativity, and you're listening to music that was in the family. And I understand she liked music like Herb Alpert and
absolutely, yeah. And she abused me to dance with her in the kitchen to Spanish Fly. I hated it, of course, because I was a little boy. But anyway, it was a good experience, and I wish I could have showed her the collaboration we did with Double with her big hero, yeah, crazy.
I mean, that must have been an amazing feeling for you later on, to hear something in your childhood, and then later on, I mean, I have that in a little bit with, if I think of very early artists that I absolutely was completely overboard on, like David Bowie or even Elton John, and then later on just to interview them for me was an immense privilege and pleasure to be able to come close to someone who had created music that had moved me so much in my childhood. So how was that when you actually worked with him?
Well, I forgot about Herb Alpert in the meantime, But then we made a deal with an American record company, and it was A&M, and he's the A of A&M. And so we went over to Los Angeles, and he showed us around in the Charlie Chaplin studios they were located. And we met him personally, and he was a great guy. I mean, he even played his latest song on the piano just for us and wanted our opinion. So what are you going to say? Oh, no, it's not good. No, it was great. He's a very easy guy. And when we were at Pink Floyd Studios in Britannia Row in London, mixing our second album with Mike Pila, um, actually the piano melody of Devil's Ball was played by Felix, and the problem was this distorted violin on the track. It was just too present, too obvious, and I wanted another instrument playing the melody, an instrument that has more high frequencies that could live up to this violin. And then, just for fun, I came up with the idea: why don't we use a trumpet? And then, of course, it was in the air. It was in the room. He was in the room, like the elephant. And but now, who's daring to say, let's ask Herb? Because I mean, he's a big guy. He's the boss of the company. Uh, but we called him, sent him a cassette, and he immediately liked the idea and he liked the theme. And yeah, and he basically recorded. He's very professional. He recorded the whole trumpet part in one go, and that was it. And I mean, how lucky could one be as having Herb playing the melody?
I mean, as you said, it's a shame that your mother didn't know that to actually
Absolutely.
be able to connect with that. When I think of music in my childhood, it would transport me into another world, a world of belonging, in a sense, where sometimes maybe I didn't feel like I belonged, like all teenagers, that I didn't belong.
Yeah.
When did music come along in that sense for you? And what was the feeling that you got from it?
Well, I played in bands in school, and we were basically playing blues, like the Rolling Stones, all the stuff that was around. Also some Beatles songs like Twist and Shout, but all in the rhythm and blues genre. But then there was a big break because they released the album Rubber Soul. And when I first heard it, I tried to play it on my guitar, and I couldn't play any song because I didn't know the chords. I was completely lost. Then I realized, okay, there's something else than just the three chords of rhythm and blues. And that's when I started to really get into music, trying to understand the compositions of the Beatles and the work of George Martin, of course, who brought them in on another level at that time. And yeah, then the journey began.
I mean, it's interesting because I think that was like mid-60s, 65, Rubber
Yeah,
Soul with the
yeah.
Beatles. Yeah.
Mm,
And that
mm.
album had Norwegian Wood, I think something like You Can Drive My
Girl,
Car. Yep.
yeah,
And also, what's interesting about that title, it was in effect saying, we're not the American soul, we're slightly different, we're Rubber Soul. Uh,
absolutely.
and because
Yeah.
they hadn't quite moved in the full direction, they were sort of, I think it was the second album that they'd written all the songs, but they were moving in this direction that we
Mm.
eventually absolutely, they changed
Yeah,
everything
it
sort of thing.
started with For Sale. For Sale was already a bit away from this rock and roll thing, and with Rubber Soul, they definitely yeah, they were into arrangements and more refined harmonies and everything.
And the other thing about the Beatles, because of you already playing the guitar, but this taking you in another direction. Can you remember why you decided to play the guitar? Because some people look at it as a sort of rebellious symbol. Some people look at it as a sexual symbol. And, because young guys are more attractive to the girls when they've got a guitar.
That's it. That's it. This was the motor in the whole thing. The girls were up to the singers and the guitar players. So, yeah.
You had
But
lessons, didn't you?
yeah, I had lessons. Also took a jazz lesson for half a year uh, to learn the more refined chords. Yeah, but I taught myself actually because then you thought, okay, I understood the Beatles, and then something completely different happened. There was Jimi Hendrix, and again, you couldn't play anything he played. Not only because he plays the guitar the other way around, but I mean, he has a complete different way to play his guitar. And I had a
Can you
neighbor.
explain
Uh,
that to me? What's the difference then? Because I'm a non-guitar player, I just want to know.
yeah, he plays the guitar like a saxophone, or he does things with the strings that are unusual. He has a completely different attitude towards what he wants to express. And I had a neighbor, he lived upstairs, and they called him the Swiss Jimi Hendrix because he had a Telecaster, he had a Marshall amp, and he played loud music. My mother went crazy about him, but I loved it. And the bigger thing was when I could visit him upstairs, and he played like he learned the the solos from Jimi Hendrix tone by tone, and he could play them. I mean, it wasn't a big thing in the end, but he could play them tone by tone, and it was amazing. And this was a new world to me. So I wanted to become another Swiss Jimi Hendrix, but never made it.
You mentioned that you were in a school band. What were you playing in the school band? What sort of music?
Anna Sue from the Creams. I had to play the guitar solo of Eric Clapton, tone by tone. Yeah. Uh,
I mean, that's got a
we, pl-
great lyric line in it, isn't it? I'm only happy when I play my guitar.
yeah, yeah.
It's the perfect line for
Mm,
someone
mm.
who wants to play a guitar, I
Uh,
presume. But that is
and
a difficult
more,
track to play, isn't it?
oh yeah, it is. Yeah. Also more easy stuff like Twist and Shout from the Beatles and yeah, stuff like that.
You were also an artist, and I think you've been a painter, haven't you, in your life as well? You're a painter. Is that
Yeah,
true?
yeah, it was a period in my life where I painted. I wanted to become a painter actually, but I gave it up. I started to play the guitar when I was 11 and never stopped playing the guitar, but there was another emphasis. I wanted to become an artist. I wanted to be respected as an artist. We had a we had a group called Modern Art Ensemble of Zurich, just the people I was living with in a villa that we could rent for not much money because the owner went bankrupt. And what we did there was it was the time in the 70s where you make happenings, you made like you just try out something, and what we did was actually performance art, and within that I was painting, others were playing the saxophone, and but out of this um, we formed a group called Troppo, a nine-piece band, and that was pretty wild because it was a mixture of what we heard at the time. It was like funkadelic Parliament and all that stuff, but also punk music because there was the Stranglers and even the Sex Pistols and the New York Dolls, and we all tried to mix them and merge it together, and the result was pretty wild. Yeah,
I mean, it was a period. I mean, I found that period really exciting because it was an experimental period where, in a sense,
absolutely.
you couldn't
Everything
make a
was
mistake.
possible.
When
Absolutely.
when you look back upon that period, how instrumental do you think that period was for your later success, for widening your perspective?
It wasn't interesting so much musically. It was interesting to perform, to to visualize a mood, a lifestyle, to be on stage and have a following. That was because the vibe was there of the sign of the time. So we were part of something much bigger, and we realized that. That was the whole movement, no? Being part of something new, and that was much more important than like the musical, the songs or the musicality.
I mean, it also had, yeah, the social and the political
Yeah,
themes, of
aspect
course,
is much,
yeah, of
yeah.
what was going on in the world.
Mm.
And I think, you know, for you, you were a teenager in the mid 60s. I think that's when you sort of hit teenage years. So in the 70s, you know, you're in your early 20s, and this political aspect is something that's sort of coming in, and it's widening you to the world. Um, in terms of the political aspect of that, and coming from Switzerland, which has always seen sort of like it's been a very neutral country in the world. It's a, you know, your father was a banker, which is sort of a cliche of
Absolutely.
Switzerland. Were you deemed a rebel by your parents?
No, no, I wasn't a rebel. I was more of a hippie. And then when when Troppo disbanded, I started my solo career, and that was the time when punk merged into new wave, and it became a little bit more intellectual, and that was something I could agree with. More arty, and I liked the bands at the time, Talking Heads and all that, and then I found myself in this kind of music. It was more like me. The punk thing was not so much me. And out of this, yeah, I met Felix and at a jam session, and we started to play together. He came back from New York. He attended the Berkeley Jazz School, and he was a just a drummer with a jazzy background. And we made funk music together, and it it immediately was good, and we knew we're gonna do something together. But it was a long way to double. We had a trio first called Ping Pong, a live trio. We played the Montreux Jazz on the big stage and everything. We were a live band. But out of this, we yeah we developed our own style. And when the bass player left from Ping Pong, we were just the two of us. And then it really started to get interesting, because then we started to experiment with new styles. The first 12-inch Naningo was a strange mixture of African rhythms and also a little punk influence. Yeah, very unique.
Just going back a little bit, the new wave era, you know, where you'd met Felix and then Ping Pong started. It was an era where technology played such an important role in the development of the musical sounds. And I don't know if I heard it or read somewhere that you had a very special technique of making multi-tracks.
Yeah, that was before Ping Pong. I released a hybrid record. On one side, 33 RPM, like just seven songs, and on the other one song on 45 RPM. But the seven songs I recorded with my Revox tape recorder, and there's a way to use it as a multi-track. You play one track to the other and back. I mean, you lose quality every time you do that, but at least because there were no affordable multi-track machines for a guy like me, and I used this, and yeah, the result was pretty fresh.
I mean, I watched an excerpt of Ping Pong today, which was, I think it must have been on a French TV show, because your album was actually, wasn't it released in France? I don't know. It seemed like it was. I was looking it up today, but it seemed like maybe it was
Which
released.
one? Which one?
Well, you had a self-titled album out, Ping Pong, didn't you? An early album. And it had Euronet Diane, and I saw
Ah,
this
yeah.
performance of that
Yeah,
on YouTube, and it was fascinating to watch it.
yeah. Yeah, it was a tough thing to play in a trio, because you have to be there. You have to get down. There is no you can't smoke a cigarette while the other one is playing, like in jazz when he has a solo. Yeah, but we were quite good, actually. Felix is a great drummer. The bass player was good, and I did my best. Yeah.
I mean, when I watched that performance, I really felt that this is a really great track, and it's, it does hark back to that. It has an era to it, obviously, because of the type of music, but it feels very experimental as well as commercial. It has both aspects going on. Did you play live with
Yeah, we
Ping? They
played
were,
Montreux Jazz was our biggest performance, and it was broadcast on TV, on Swiss TV. And we made a short tour in Germany, and yeah, we played live. We were a live band, yeah.
I mean, you talked about when you met Felix, and because you just made music and it seemed to work. That seemed to be the message that I got across. That's why
Yeah.
we worked together. What was the way of actually working, and how were decisions made? Because that's always been problems in bands, whether it's two, three, four, or whatever.
When we were just the two of us, when we started Double, um, we decided that no matter who was the creator of an idea, we're going to split everything 50-50, like the Lennon-McCartney principle. And it worked fine. It worked until the end. Yeah. So the main thing was, I mean, I wrote all the lyrics because as a singer, I want to sing my own lyrics. That was not questionable. But all the rest is you come up with an idea and then you develop it together, or you develop it alone and the other one says, oh no, that's not good. It's just a give and take.
Was it you and Felix that had recorded um, early demos with Phil Manzanera?
Oh yeah, with Ping Pong, yeah. They never got released because of technical problems with the record company. They wanted another producer, which was stupid. But we had a great time. We were at Phil's studio in Jersey, and we recorded 4 tracks with him as a producer. And yeah, it was great. And he showed me a lot of effects on the guitar because he's the master there. Yeah, I still have these tapes, but it's a pity that they never got released. Yeah,
Yeah, it's an amazing
that's
thing to
amazing.
have something
Yeah,
like that
yeah,
in your possession, and
mm.
sadly not be able to release them.
Yeah,
I mean, you talked about when you got together as Double and you started releasing tracks before you became successful, and I think you mentioned, was it Naningo, the first?
Naninga, the first 12-inch. Yeah,
Yeah, well, it's 44 copies. Is
yeah,
that true?
sold 44. That's what the record company told us, and I say, hey, 44. I mean, come on, I could stand down there at the corner and sell 50. Yeah, ridiculous.
How did you feel when I mean, okay, you create a band, and
Yeah,
you had this, as you said, this Montreux event was really positive for you.
yeah.
And then you release a record, and the first thing that happens is it flops. It must be a really weird position to be in, or was it something that you just sort of managed to put aside and go, okay, next?
Yeah, we managed to put it aside. I wonder why, but no hard feelings. But yeah, we went on, and then we released Rangoon Moon, and it sold a few thousand, and VH1 played the video, and then Woman of the World. We sold like 25,000 copies in Germany, and then the record company said, "Oh, okay, uh, you have a budget to do an album now."
And that was Blue. And of
And
course,
that was Blue, yeah.
you know, obviously, the big single, Captain of Her Heart, was such a massive success. I mean, it got probably into more charts in countries in the world than your first single sold. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's easy.
So, were
Yeah.
you prepared for that success? The interview with Kurt continues in a moment. Just time for me to ask you to please like, subscribe, and most of all, become a member, because every little helps me continue this podcast.
The Captain of Her Heart wasn't supposed to be the first single because at the time, radio played up-tempo tunes. And actually, we wanted to release I Know a Place as the first single. But at the record company, the secretaries started to whistle the melody all the time. And the A&R guys realized, okay, maybe it's not a good idea to not release it as a single. But it wasn't easy. I mean, in Germany, we released the album and the single end of August 1985. And the album immediately went into the charts in Germany, but not the single. The single charted in October, and we were really happy. Felix and I, we said, "Hey, the album is in the charts," but the record company said, "No, that's bad. It has to be the single first, and then the album." We didn't check these mechanisms at the time, but people thought, yeah, there were enough songs to buy the entire album, and that was good with us. And
Uh,
then, yeah, then they worked on that single. They really had the record company really had to work on that single because it was unusual. You know, they told us the middle part, what is happening there? There's nothing happening there. Actually, the middle part was supposed to be the second verse, but I didn't know what to sing because I sang everything in the first verse, so we, we left it blank. But looking back at it, it was very important. This melancholic, rather dark part prepares you for the return of the melody that can shine when the light comes in again, you know. But it was all subconscious. It wasn't really. It wasn't a clever thing or so, you know. We just did it. We felt to do it like that.
but it was also, in a sense, it was very well, from an outside perspective, it was incredibly brave because it was the antithesis of everything that was out at that time.
Mhm.
You know, the that
Absolutely.
sound
Absolutely.
was
Yeah.
nothing
That's what
like.
they told us at the record company. I mean, this is not obvious. This is just, you know. But then I think, I mean, there are a few parameters that were right. Also in the UK, for instance, Gary David played it on Radio 1 like every half hour and stuff like that. That's something you can't um, foresee. But in Germany, they finally got a TV show on Saturday late afternoon that everybody watched at the time called Kangaroo. And there we had a performance. And this made like zack. On Monday, everybody ran to the shops and bought the single. But you know, this is just you have to be lucky. It's the way it is, especially when you have something that is uncommon, that is not obvious.
I
And
mean,
we
it
were
must have been a
lucky. Yeah.
period where you were just on promotion
Hmm.
around the world.
A long period, yeah.
So was that an uncreative period? Do you understand what I mean?
Yes,
Because a lot of time.
definitely,
So how did that
definitely.
impact you personally?
Well, you know, we didn't release, we didn't have a worldwide release. So it was country by country, and we were just following the success. That's why we were on promotion tour for almost a year and had no time to write songs. And that was a problem when the record company said, "Now, where's the second album?" Yeah, but we had a great time traveling all over and doing these TV shows and interviews and stuff. And yeah, it was fun.
I mean, these were playbacks, weren't they? They weren't. You weren't performing necessarily live, as I
Yeah,
understand.
the playbacks and something I really hate, half playback. You know, because we made the biggest TV show in France was Sacre Soirée, Saturday night show, 14 million viewers. And I was kind of the goalie, you know. Everybody had a great time at the dressing room drinking beer because they didn't have to play. It was from tape, but I had to sing live, you know. I felt like, oh no, what are you doing with me? And I have no memory of the performance. I was like I had a blackout or something, but it went well. People ran to the shops on Monday and bought the record. Yeah. Yeah, most of it was full playback. There was on Austrian TV, we performed live once just the Felix on the grand piano and me singing. Yeah, but basically, yeah.
When did Felix's fear of performance start to show? Because you talked earlier about Montreux, and that's live. This is half live, so you're singing live, but he's not. But why, or where did it come from, do you think, this sort of fear that he had? Was it always there?
Now, when he's a drummer, genuinely a drummer, and when he plays the drum, he's with himself. He's like, that's his instrument. And he wasn't a piano player. He played the piano with double because I'm worse than him playing the piano. That's the reason. Uh, but he never felt like a piano player. I think he's a great piano player, but he never felt like that. And he was a perfectionist. He wanted to do it right. He wanted to have the same arrangement like on record. But life, I tried to explain, life is something else. It's more about energy. It's more about performance. It's not, you can also make mistakes. It's not a problem because you can improvise. And yeah, and he wanted to do it the best way he can, and that's why he was afraid of performing. A big mistake for double in the end when I look back, because playing live has a lot of advances, because you have an immediate response from the public. You feel if a song is right or not, especially when you're testing new songs. A good way. Yeah. Anyway, now I have a band, and from time to time I perform, and I realize how stupid it was not to go on tour with double.
Yeah, I mean, I want to come on to your solo career, which has been, also a long solo career. And this part of your career was actually quite short, really, in a sense. But I just want to ask a couple more questions about Captain of Her Heart, because Felix used to tell this story, and I've never really thought it was true, about the bird
About the
singing.
bird, yeah, the
Yeah, I mean,
blackbird
tell me the
story,
story
yeah.
first of all, and then tell me, is it true?
Okay. It could have been true. I mean, I know the place where he played his piano at home, and there was a window next to the piano, and it was springtime. That's also true. And maybe the piano was open, and there is a tree in front of the window. And he said there was a blackbird, and blackbird singing goes like da dee da dee da dee. That's true too. It's E G E G, and then he played this on the piano, and from there he started to improvise, and that's how the melody was born. It could be true, it could be not true. It's a good story though.
But what's the song really about? Because you wrote the lyrics, so.
The song is a sad song, actually. It's a song where a woman, after long suffering, makes a decision not to wait for this guy anymore. And people asked me later, when social media was a thing, what did she do? I mean, did she kill herself? What happened to that lady? And I didn't like the idea, of course, that she killed herself. But of course, it was in the room. And that's why I wrote the sequel to The Captain of Her Heart, and that's Twice in a Lifetime. And because I wanted to show, no, there's a way out. If you make a decision that is hard, and you're suffering, but it's important that you set an end to the suffering, and then you can go in another direction. And that's what the song Twice in a Lifetime is about.
In a sense, when you say that, it's sort of what hit me was that on the second album, of course, that was where the differences came out a little between you and Felix, and at the end you decide to split. And in a sense, you're sort of describing the relationship that when you choose to go it alone, you can have the life that you want. And in a sense, that's what happened, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
I
life
mean,
imitating art. That's all I'm trying to
we
say.
we only we only had musical differences, and I didn't want to I didn't want to come to the point where our friendship was in danger. So we said, let's call it a day, and you do your soundtrack for movies. That's what he wanted to do, actually, more cinematographic compositions. And I wanted to return to the pop song. And that wasn't possible anymore with the two of us. That's why we separated. Yeah,
So you managed to keep the friendship. Did you manage to stay
absolutely. Yeah,
in?
yeah,
You stayed in
mm.
communication in that
Yeah,
period.
yeah, yeah.
Did you actually play each other music that you were
Yeah, yeah,
developing?
he sent me a song. You know, at the end of the 90s, we went back to the studio to try to record another album to see if it's possible to make another attempt. It didn't work out in the end, but there were 8 songs from that session. And when he died in 2004, I to wanted these songs to see the light. I mean, I thought we can't leave them in the drawer just like that, because they were good, and it was also yeah, I wanted to make a tribute to our mutual work. And but I didn't want to do it myself, so I asked Pit Baumgartner of De-Phazz to remix the songs and to give them another approach, another temperature, and it worked out great.
When you actually went solo, what do you feel the differences were for you? Was there more freedom? I mean, obviously, being alone, there was more freedom, but in terms of what did you want to explore that was slightly different than what you were doing before?
For me, it wasn't different, but I missed the communication with Felix, because I mean, besides he's a great musician, he also yeah, his point of view was sort of missing in the beginning, because I had to work with studio musicians that were fantastic, but you don't have a relationship to them, that they're doing a job. And with him, it was like, yeah, it was different. We more like another part that that was so relevant, and so all of a sudden you're all alone, and I mean, okay, you have all the freedom, but on the other hand, you don't have someone who says, "No, come on, that's not so good." And yeah, it wasn't easy, but I'm happy now to have this freedom to just release songs from time to time when I feel like, and no pressure.
I mean, I think what's fascinating is I spent the whole day from early morning on Spotify with Kurt Maloo, but Kurt Maloo double everything, all the way through.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Mm.
but I mean, and it transported me into like a different world. The music transports you into a different world, which is really fascinating. It's not me listening to music; it's somehow taking me to a
That's
different
nice.
place,
Mm.
and it's has this very sort of distinctive melodic style, and just sort of gently sweeps you along, which is really nice. Do you sort of understand your own music in that way?
Yes, but there. When you look back at songs that you did like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, some of them they're getting older, and you say, "Oh, uh, how great! I mean, look at you! Look how the way you look. You still look great." And other songs you say, "Ah, I wouldn't do that again. I would have done it differently." But that's the funny thing about it. But the whole thing is somehow, or like everything I did is somehow homogenic, because it comes from me. It is my world. So if you say it takes you to another world, yeah, it takes you to my world, and I hope it's okay to be in my world for a morning on on Spotify.
No, well, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, I have to say. When you
Okay.
worked again with Felix and you were developing those songs, I mean, you later released them, obviously, on your solo work. Um, but when you were working with him, did it? It's just a difficult question to ask because obviously he died. But did it sort of reinforce in you that it was the right thing for you to go solo back then?
Yeah, because it didn't work out in the studio really. He was homesick. He didn't want to be in the studio. He wanted to be with his family, and um, it was better. I mean, we could have continued working, but separately in different locations. That now it's possible. At the time it wasn't really possible, but now with a laptop you can send files from one to each other and start and work on other ideas or on the ideas of the other guy. But at the time you had to be in the studio and. Yeah, the time was it was a different time, there's always there's a cycle, and the cycle came to an end. So this is the decision to separate was right, although it was painful. So
I mean, you continuously work on new tracks, don't you? There's this off the record, which I think
yeah,
is going to be a sorry.
I call it off the record because there is no pressure to make a concept album or something like that. So I can work on songs, and when I consider them finished, I can release them, out of context. And I think that's great for me because I'm a slow worker, and I don't want people to wait 5 years for another album. So I can I can release yeah, songs from time to time.
And also, when you perform, you can include these songs in your live set and get to
Yeah,
know
yeah.
how they're working.
How they were, yeah, how they get perceived. Yeah.
I think many artists I've talked to who've had an absolute killer hit
Hmm.
in their lives and have carried on and recorded and done what they've wanted to do in their life afterwards. Um, Sometimes describe the big hit as the noose around their neck. It doesn't mean to say they don't love it, but it means that
Yeah,
whenever
yeah, I
they
know what
do
you mean. Yeah,
something, they got to
yeah.
play it.
For me, it's more like the sun, and when the sun is shining, you don't see the stars. You know, I, I, I mean, I know it's not possible, but sometimes I imagine how the songs all songs would look like and sound like if there was not no Captain of our Heart. Just to see what is there. And personally, I think there's a lot there, but yeah. I have to live with with the success of the Captain of Our, and I can really I mean I'm a happy guy to have a hit, Others don't have a hit, so
Yeah,
what
I
do I
mean, I don't want to turn
complain?
it into money, but it's a
Mm.
it's a way of supporting yourself to be able to do what you want in
Yeah,
life,
you
isn't it?
can do what you want. Yeah, yeah.
Which I think is a really, really, really brilliant thing. How much of a blessing, because it's been, over 40 years that music has been a central focus. And I mean, in a professional terms, it's been a central focus of your life and longer, obviously, in your life. So how much of a blessing is music to your life?
I thought I can live without music. That there were periods in my life where I thought I don't need music, but that's not true. I always came back. And music is a part of my life. I have to accept that. And there are times I don't touch my guitar for like month. And when I hold my guitar again and I start to play, then I realize what I was missing.
So what do you do when you're not
I read a
writing?
lot. I read a lot. I'm a reader, intensive reader. Books are also a very important part of my life, and I travel. especially in Germany. I discover places where I've never been, and yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. You live in Hamburg, I believe, now.
Yeah.
And you've lived in France. You've obviously lived in Switzerland. And I mean, we have it's a sort of similar, I'm going to say a similar story. You know, I was born in Britain. I've lived in Germany for about 30 years, and now I'm moving to Athens. So I've sort of moving in a southern direction, and you're moving in a more northerly direction. But living in different countries and having that experience does change you, and it opens up different perspectives, and it allows you to be a slightly different person as well.
That's
when you
true,
change country.
That's
so
true.
What do you feel how have you changed because of the changes of being in different countries and in different cultures?
Well, moving from Paris to Hamburg also was the time when I became a family man, because my daughter was born in Paris, and then I moved with my wife to Hamburg, and then we had a son. So I changed my life anyway, because it's a different if you're single or or a family man. And so Hamburg for me is the ideal place actually to have a family. Now my children are grown up and they left the house. But it was a good decision to come here because I actually wanted to go to Los Angeles for the career. It would have made sense, but my wife didn't want to go there. And and I'm glad she insisted. It was a good move.
Yeah, I think Los Angeles can be a tough city to live in as well. So
especially if you don't have a driver's license like me.
God.
That would have been
Kurt Maloo, it's been brilliant to talk to you. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
It was my pleasure.
And I want to thank you for your cultural contribution, because it has been an immense pleasure to listen to your back catalogue and have Captain of Her Heart, which I heard endlessly, obviously back then on MTV, and today it sort of bubbled up. It helped bubble up the memories for me, and it was a lovely period. So Kurt Maloo, thank you so much, and thank you again for your cultural contribution.
Steve. Yeah, and all the best.
Up there is an interview I recommend. Down there is where you can find all the podcast interviews, and here is where you can connect.